Right, good morning and good
Right.
afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. We're here, we're ready to go. It's Friday, and everyone wants to go back to sleep.
Ready for some headlines. I'll probably be wide awake in a half hour. So, we'll see. Maybe I'll just go grab some coffee and go jogging or something stupid like that.
Aren't you more
I
of
go
a biker?
jogging. Huh?
Aren't you more of a biker?
More of a sleeper.
Resident
My
sleep.
bike got stolen. Remember, did I tell you about my bike got stolen like months ago? Well, I got a legitimate excuse to be lazy now.
Someone
Well,
stole
it
my
wasn't a
damn
reason.
bike.
Well, what? What do I gotta do? I gotta find a bike I like as much as that one? Or, I told the cops, hey, okay, if we find it, we'll, I don't know. They have a big old lot of bikes. Lot of
Yeah.
fence around it. And all these bikes that nobody's ever going to use again. You can sit there and rust. Yeah, but they're, at least they're being held as evidence. I don't know. My bike wasn't in. All right, let's do the headline thingy.
Yep, just looking for
I'll
a
figure
third
out-
headline here.
Life's okay. Oh, I've got some headlines written here. Right, let me get my freaking glasses out. All right.
Okay. Okay.
Hey.
Stay on Before Coffee. Bordeaux City Hall set on fire amid nationwide protests against French pension changes.
Right. Sports. We have Wildcats, we have Bulldogs, we have Huskies, and we have Owls.
No one can deny it now. Death flight plane to be returned to Argentina. Flight logs revealed how 12 people were thrown out to their deaths into the Atlantic during years of dictatorship.
Oh. Drone strike kills U.S. contractor in Syria. U.S. retaliates.
Do not coast Netanyahu amid disquiet over Israel's right-wing coalition. Chief Rabbi calls for unity among British Jews as protests planned a visit of Israeli Prime Minister.
Vladimir Putin is charged in The Hague, although their authority is kind of vague. Didn't know that.
Your last story.
Oh, I thought you were gonna do it. I thought we were taking turns.
No.
You sound better doing it. I sound like I'm dying talking. Start talking. Hope that guy's alright! Alright. That and more on March 24th, 2023's episode of Before Coffee. Oh, maybe the drone strike.
The drone.
We'll do that as how would kill so.
Alright,
my
for
God.
my first news story. Largely peaceful protests are marred by outbreaks of violence as unions claim 3.5 million turned out, while authorities put number just over 1 million. Emmanuel Macron felt the full force of French anger on Thursday as protesters gathered across the country to demonstrate their opposition to the pension age being raised from 62 to 64. Unions claim 3.5 million people turned out across the country. In Paris, union leaders claimed that the record was 800,000 people took part in mostly peaceful march through the city. Police gave the figures as 119,000 to demand that the government drop the fiercely contested change. However, the National Day of Action was marred by outbreaks of violence and vandalism. In southwestern city of Bordeaux, the front door of the city hall was set on fire, while in Paris, police and groups of protesters clashed late into the night. French union members carrying flags and banners were flanked by their own stewards to ensure their security. The crowd was dense and angry with the government and president, but the mood was also festive and motivated by a show of solidarity. The atmosphere was soured by a group of young people called casseurs, mashers, dressed in black and wearing masks, who had positioned themselves at the head of the march and destroyed bus shelters, advertising hoarding shop windows, the front of McDonald's. Oh no, not McDonald's. However, they will survive. Will they survive? I know, not feeling bad for McDonald's. Newspaper kiosk, leaving a trail of glass and piles of burning bins in their wake. They also put up cast iron grills around trees, broke up paving stones, which they threw at police. The worst clashes took place in Place de l'Opera, later Place de la Bastille, where police attempted to disperse them with tear gas. Many of the protesters, particularly the young, said that they had been galvanized by Macron's appearance on television on Wednesday. She said that protests were legitimate but would not lead to a U-turn on the law, which not only raises the official retirement age but requires workers to make contributions to the pension system for longer. Among the angriest were women protesters who said the new legislation was a double punishment for those who had taken time out of their careers to raise children, who were more likely to have low-paid and menial jobs. Everyone is angry. Everyone thinks this law is unfair, but it particularly penalizes women, who are expected to produce future generations of the nation and then find they are punished for doing so. Marie, 46, a social worker, says. In a 30-minute televised interview on Wednesday, Macron rolled out the dissolution of parliament and reshuffle of his centrist government and the resignation of him as prime minister, Elizabeth Borne, as the opposition had demanded. Said his only regret that I was not succeeded in convincing people of the necessity of this reform. Valérie Rabault, the president of Socialist Party group in the National Assembly, called on Macron to order a final debate in Parliament before the pension law is enacted. We're putting all options on the table. We have entered a very serious democratic crisis, less than a year since the president of the Republic was elected, she said, adding that blockade damages our democracy and damages France's image abroad. Marie Stoll of the CDT Union told France Info Radio that the protesters were determined. The law was passed by force, there's anger. She said, our objective is for the maximum number of people to stop work. They will probably do a strike next week. The whole country will not do anything. So that's good. More people need to be like France, not only just the goal. The goals. The goal to actually protest, but also the cultural acceptance of protesting. Like, it's a cultural marker of French people protest, where in other countries protesting is, it's too much effort and that's bad. Yeah, bad people do that, you know? There's too much of that in the world where people are like, I'm not showing my anger against the government. That's bad.
Well, the thing is, seeing like massive protests in Mexico didn't see. You've seen massive protests in Israel.
There's also a massive protest in Chile I was reading about.
Right. I slipped my mind. By next memory of it. Yeah, Chile. Does my mind, you know.
Yeah.
Little bits out there, yeah.
All of that is south. So it's Mexico. Yeah. It's fine.
Everything that's not English speaking. That's your name. Not just necessarily. Oh yeah, Brazil too. When that idiot Steeler. What's his name? The guy who lost is Belisaro.
Yeah.
I really won. He tried to Trump, and everybody's like, "Shut the fuck up." You don't have as many stupid people. Okay, so in sports news, apparently animal teams are the ones that are going to win. As we see yesterday, the Owls of Florida Atlantic University have defeated the Tennessee Volunteers. So Owls will defeat a Volunteer. Wildcats of Kansas will defeat any kind of Spartan, Michigan State Spartans. So some Greek soldiers that have no chance. Greek soldiers have no chance against a Wildcat. And the we got the Bruins, which is a bear, lost to the Gonzaga Bulldogs. And what did I always? Oh, and the Huskies, the Connecticut Huskies, your favorite, defeated the Arkansas Razorbacks of Pig. So those two animals kind of. And I don't know if you took an owl, ran it up against a Volunteer, what would happen? Okay, so here's our sports, and a kind of historic upset. The number 9 seed is going to the Elite 8. Florida Atlantic makes its first Elite Eight, bounces Tennessee. When the horn sounded on this is from AP Wire, Ralph D. So, when the horn sounded on the greatest victory in the history of Florida Atlantic Athletics, Nick Boyd and Brian Greenlee hopped onto the press row table to celebrate. Instead of going to the locker room, some of the Owls players made their way up to the stands to sing New York, New York with their fans. The Boca Raton, Florida-based school. They're in Boca Raton. They might not get that big stinking pile of seaweed. Get this off. Boca Raton, Florida-based school that has only begun competing in Division I for the last 30 years, had just one previous appearance in an NCAA tournament, is now a victory away from the Final Four. The Owls used a second-half push led by Michael Forrest to upset 4-seed Tennessee 62-55 on Thursday night in the Sweet 16. Ninth-seeded FAU will play third-seeded Kansas in the East Regional Final at Kansas State. I said it again. Third-seeded Kansas State. Kansas is bounced. East Region Final in Madison Square Garden. Yeah, our guys definitely feel like they belong in this stage. Sure, coach. And even before the tournament started, this was unquestionably the greatest season FAU history. Now the Owls are one of the biggest stories in all sports. We're just a scrappy group, Boyd said. Unbreakable. John L. Davis led Conference USA championships with 15 points, and Forrest finished 11, including 8 straight when FAU took a role in the final 10. The Volunteers, 25-11, who were looking for the second straight Elite Eight appearance in program history. The second Elite Eight appearance in program history. Shot just 33%, including 6 from 23 range. Josiah Jordan James and Jonas Ado scored 10. Certainly proud of the effort, but that these guys have given us all year. The tough times and injuries. It's always disappointing because we won it all and we came up short. Tennessee coach Rick Barnes. Barnes has made 27 NCAA appearances with 4 schools, but he has reached the Elite Eight only 3 times and gone to the Final Four once. So he's been kind of a great coach. It just never just kind of fits. There's our story. We can pick games later for the weekend.
Yeah.
We need to pick all the way through to the Final Four because there's a load of games today.
Okay.
All right, go ahead. Yeah.
In my news, we're talking about death planes. On the night of 14 December 1977, three pilots flew their turboprop aeroplane for more than an hour over the Atlantic Ocean. Technical log that they had completed on takeoff registered no passengers. That was a lie. On the cabin floor behind them lay 8 women and 4 men, tortured, drugged, and barely conscious. 2 of the flight crew stripped the victims naked, opened the ramp door of the rear of the plane. Then they pushed their victims out to fall thousands of feet into the South Atlantic. Though such death flights, by which thousands perished, were routine during Argentina's 1976 to 83 military dictatorship, many of their deaths remain unknown. After a astounding series of events, however, not only have the pilots of this particular fight been identified and convicted, but the plane itself, a Belfast-built short SC.7 Skyvan, has been located in the U.S. and soon to return to Argentina, where it will be put on display in Buenos Aires as the Museum of Memory set up in the former Argentinian military death camp that it once served. Unlike Brazil and Uruguay, where wide-ranging amnesties were passed for crimes committed during their dictatorship, Argentina has tried and convicted about 1,000 former military officers for human rights abuses under military rule. But that consensus shattered under former President Mauricio Marci, who may run again this year's election, and who this week dismissed the issue as the human rights scam of what happened 40 years ago. You know those people who affected by it are still alive, right? Like the families that, you know, their daughter got thrown out of the plane, they're still alive. It is hoped that the plane will return to Argentina by 30th April, anniversary of the first time the mothers of Plaza de Mayo marched in front of the presidential palace in 1977, demanding news of their children who had been forcibly disappeared by state forces. 12 people thrown from Skyvan on the night of 14 December belonged to the group of Church of Holy Cross, named after the Irish community church where they met. They included 3 members of the Mother de Plaza de Mayo, including Villefort, 3 other relatives of missing people, 2 French nuns, 4 young activists who helped the relatives in their search for their loved ones. I knew most of them because they came regularly to Buenos Aires Herald, an English language daily where I worked. That was one of the few outlets to report on the disappearances. After we published their stories, the activists tried to persuade me to join their group, and the mothers sometimes returned, if only to hold my hand in silence for 15 minutes. 2 were taken from the Comet Bar near the Herald offices where they had been scheduled to meet on December 8th. Had I been at the table that day, I might have ended up tumbling from that Skyvan. The aircraft used for the flight was located thanks to a tireless search by death camp survivor Miriam Lewin, an Italian photographer, Giancarlo Criado, grew up with a fascination for airplanes. 5 Skyvans were believed to have been used in the death flights. 2 were shot down during the Falklands-Malvinas War with the UK. 3 others were sold, of which one, PA-51, survives. This was the aircraft which Criado and Lewin eventually tracked down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where it was owned by a company that flies courier packages to the Bahamas. Wow, imagine being like, yo, people were tossed out of the back into the ocean, and I'm just delivering mail to the Bahamas out of it. Crazy.
Oh, don't forget, Argentina, a lot of Nazis.
Yeah, no kidding, they had death camps.
Yeah, well, we had this idea back in the old days.
In Buenos Aires, 3 women will be waiting for it with mixed emotions. When I first saw the plane in Fort Lauderdale in 2014, I wasn't able to go on board. I could have died on that plane myself, and many people I knew died on it. I don't know how I will react now, said Lewin. When I see photos of the cabin, I can't help but imagine my mother in there, said Callega, but I still think it has to be on display at the Death Camp Museum. It's part of history now. It has to do with love, said the Vincenti. My mother went out to look for my brother, putting her own life at risk. She transformed her pain into love. She did that under a dictatorship. If I can't do it during a democracy, that would make me a coward. Right. So, death planes. More fun things to discover that people did at post-war to each other, because everything was just a mess back then. Still is, but...
The history of scumbags. Which is basically human history.
Yeah.
Holy sorry, history news are not usually pleasant things. News doesn't go, today 4,000 planes landed safely. 400 schools had 400,000 schools had classes today and there were no shootings. That never gets reported. All right, drone strike kills U.S. contractor. U.S. retaliates. Syria and Iran. Oh, Iran is up. A U.S. contractor, Washington with the Luke Eston, John Gambrell. A U.S. contractor was killed and 5 U.S. service members and 1 other U.S. contractor were wounded when a suspected Iranian drone strike struck a facility on a coalition base northeast Syria on Thursday, Pentagon said in a statement. Released late Thursday, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said U.S. Central Command forces retaliated with precision airstrikes against facilities in eastern Syria used by groups affiliated with Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Defense Department said the intelligence community had determined that the unmanned aerial vehicle was of Iranian origin. That airstrikes were conducted in response to today's attack, as well as a series of recent attacks against coalition forces in Syria by groups affiliated with the Revolutionary Guard, Austin said. Overnight, videos of the social media purported to show explosions in Syria's Deir ez-Zor, a strategic province that borders Iraq and contains oil fields. Iran-backed militia groups in Syria forces control the area, which also has seen suspected airstrikes by Israel in recent months, allegedly targeting Iranian supply routes. Iran's preliminary Revolutionary Guard, which answers only to Supreme Lord Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has been suspected of carrying out attacks with bomb-carrying drones across the wider East. In recent months, Russia has begun to use Iranian drones in its attacks on sites across Ukraine as part of its war in Kiev. Iran has denied being responsible for the attacks, and though Western nations and experts have tied components of the drones back to Iran. Attack on the U.S. response threatened to upend recent efforts in the region. It de-escalates tension. As Saudi Arabia and Iran have been working toward reopening embassies in each other's country. The kingdom also has acknowledged efforts to reopen its embassy in Syria, whose embattled president Bashar Assad has been backed by Iran in its country's long war. U.S. Army General Michael Eric Kurilla, the head of the America's Military Central Command, warned that American forces could carry out additional strikes if needed. We are postured for scalable options in the face of additional Iranian attacks, and we're really bored. So don't care. Love launching the. I added that.
Yeah.
Sierra state-run Santa News Agency, SANA, did not immediately acknowledge any strikes. Syria's mission to the United Nations did not immediately respond to the request for comment. There was no immediate reaction from Iran over the strikes, which came during the holy Muslim fasting month of Ramadan. Iran's mission to the United States did not immediately respond to the comment. Qatar's state-run news agency reported the call between its foreign minister and Jake Sullivan, U.S. National Security Advisor. Doha has been an interlocutor between Iran. I don't know what interlocutor. Between Iran and U.S. recently amid tensions. Iran's nuclear program. And mission for today for me is to look up the word interlocutor. Your story. Have you heard that word before in your life? Interlocutor.
Yeah.
I want to see if that's an actual word. Your story. I want to see if AP is just inventing words. Okay. All right.
We've got Chief Rabbi calling for unity among British Jews as protests plan to visit of Israel Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak will meet Benjamin Netanyahu. I don't even care about saying his name.
Netanyahu.
Yeah,
he's been around for a while.
For him to do more distance the UK from the Israel Prime Minister and the extreme of him is right-wing coalition government. Chief Rabbi in London, Sir Ephraim Mirvis, writing in the Jewish Chronicle, called for unity among British Jews as demonstrators prepared to gather in central London to protest the visit.
Netanyahu is a thug. Anyway, yes.
Flying to Britain, leaving behind a country in turmoil and its coalition government riven by splits over whether it should defer judicial reforms that have been led to 11 weeks of rallies and revealed deep fissures in the Israeli society. As promised by Netanyahu on Thursday night, that he was taking direct charge of the judicial reforms did little to quell the turmoil in the country, as he insisted that the changes were not designed to neuter the judiciary, but rebalance power within Israel's institution. There have been hopes that before leaving, he would announce a temporary shelving of the changes after a threatened rebellion from Yoav Gallant, his defense minister. Gallant, a former deputy of chief of the armed forces, warned him that pressuring ahead with the controversial reforms would weaken the Israel Defense Forces and potentially lead to the call-up of reservists being boycotted. But the succession of domestic protests and spiraling violence in the West Bank is threatening to overwhelm Netanyahu's wider foreign policy goals. He has so far visited Germany and Italy to discuss the Iran crisis. UK politicians called on Sunak not to roll out the red carpet for Netanyahu.
Stop.
Why?
Netanyahu. Right? That's his name. I'm just saying.
I don't care.
Get used to it.
Name. I don't like the guy.
I'm just saying I've been a president for like 20 years. I've been hearing his name like Netanyahu. That's just the funniest name in the world for an asshole. Go ahead. Sorry.
Where was I?
I'm a pronunciation guide sometimes because it's like, yeah.
Chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Alicia Cairns, warned of the risk of the third intifada, adding she was not sure that Israel's president coming to Britain now was a wise move. This is a very long thing. Palestinian ambassador to the UK, Hussam Zomlov, described the roadmap and the visit as a profound step backwards for the chances of peace based on two-state outcome. 2030 agreements, he said, represents an abdication of the UK's responsibilities under international law and the UK's unique responsibility for the Palestinian issue. He said that the context of quickening settlement development, spike in settler terrorism, and avowedly racist remarks being made by the members of the government of Israel, sending precisely the wrong message at the wrong time by rewarding Israel with expanding trade technology and security ties. The Jordanian Foreign Minister Ayman Safadi, who met with the UK Foreign Secretary James Cleverly on Wednesday, has been infuriated by the claims of Israel's far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich, said that there was no such thing as a Palestinian people. Jordan summoned the Israeli ambassador in Amman on Monday to warn him that his remarks constituted racist and extremist behavior that violates international norms. Fadi followed up his protests in a phone call on Thursday with the European Union Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell, warning that Israel's government must reject the reckless and disgusting remarks of its finance minister. He said, "Nothing includes coalition politics justifies silence on this behavior. Appeasing such a radicalism is a danger to us all." His remarks reflect anger that some Western governments are fearful of intervening in case it destabilizes Israel's politics further. So, they're racist, but we don't want the country to collapse, so I guess we just let them be racist? Your story.
It's a mess. Yeah. In more war news. If Putin goes to Europe, he should be detained by extradited to court in Hague, according to Anthony Blinken. U.S. Secretary of State, this is Yahoo News. Not Netanyahu News, but Yahoo News. Hey, little joke there. A very small joke. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken believes that European signatories to the Rome Statute should execute the arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin and extradite him to the International Criminal Court. Blinken, at a hearing at the U.S. Senate Committee on Appropriations on Wednesday, said Blinken at a U.S. Senate Committee on Appropriations on Wednesday, as European Pravda correspondent reports. "I believe that everyone who is a participant in the International Criminal Court has a certain obligations should fulfill their obligations," the Secretary of State, when asked whether Putin should be detained in Europe if he decided to go there. At the same time, he was evasive when asked whether the same fate would have awaited a Russian president had he come to the United States. "I can't say in advance because we need to consider the laws, and we, as you know, are not a member of the International Criminal Court, therefore I would like not to discuss it," Blinken said, adding that Putin is unlikely to plan to come to the United States in the near future. Yeah, I can see that happening. I think we should arrest him if he comes. No, unless it's an official diplomatic. Diplomatic talks need to be held in neutral grounds, typically. But yeah, if he wants to be bold enough to go to Europe, arrest him. Pre-trial Chamber 2 of the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for Putin and Maria Belova, Russian Presidential Commissioner for Children's Affairs, on 17 March 2023. Very short, very sweet story. Not so sweet. Go ahead. Your story.
All right, we're going into our media news here. Joni Mitchell. "I'm about hobbling along, but I'm doing all right." Cameron Crowe, the director of the almost famous and Jerry Maguire is developing a new drama film with Joni Mitchell about her life. According to a story on the entertainment site Above the Line, subsequently reposted on Mitchell's own website, the project is not a documentary, and Mitchell has been collaborating with Crowe on the script for the past 2 years. Crowe made his name as a teenager writing for Rolling Stone and Creed magazine, experiences he went on to dramatize in Almost Famous. He's a music fanatic and has a long-standing friendship with Mitchell, who he has interviewed numerous times. In 2017, he accompanied her to her first public appearance, the Grammy Award Gala, since suffering a brain aneurysm years earlier. Crane has not directed a feature film since the rom-com Aloha in 2015, which was a box office failure and was criticized for casting of Emma Stone as a character with Hawaiian and Chinese heritage. Ah yes, I remember that. Emma Stone's supposed to be Chinese now, okay. In 2019, he produced the documentary David Crosby, Remember My Name, about the folk rock singer-songwriter who died in January this year. Mitchell, 79, has not released a studio album since 2007's Shine. Kept a low profile after her 2015 aneurysm. But she returned to live performance with a surprise set at Newport Folk Festival in July 2022, playing 13 songs alongside Brandy, Charlie, and others.
Brandy Carlisle.
Oh,
Carlisle.
sorry. I put an H there for some reason. Brandy Carlisle and others. It's booked to play another solo show in June at Washington State Gorge Amphitheater. A live album of her Newport performance is also planned, she told Elton John in an interview in November. Previously,
that's Elton John.
Material has emerged in recent years across a series of 6 archival releases by label Rhino, beginning with Joni Mitchell Archives Volume 1, the early years, 1963 to 1967, 2020. What were you going to say?
I forgot. Something about, he said Elton John kind of fast. I'm the pronunciation guy, so that's Elton John. Yeah. I love Joni Mitchell.
It's too late to fix my speeching mannerisms. You should have done it when I was
well, I'm just, as you go along, life is not mistakes. It's learned lessons. You know? Joni Mitchell said,
Yeah.
Rose and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and so forth. And feather canyons everywhere. I looked at clouds that way. Now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone.
Yeah.
Both sides. There's shitty sides to everything. Probably the best song ever written. Anyway. Right. Oh, and this day in history, I guess we're on. Guess what happened in this day in history?
What?
Exactly 420 years ago, the Stuart dynasty began as Queen Elizabeth I died and King James VI of Scotland ascended to the English throne as James I of England.
Wow.
And yes, so happy birthday, Stuart dynasty! We're number one! We're number one! Anyway.
Until they all died.
Queen Anne died 100 years later. American magician Harry Houdini, who earned an international reputation, was born. Well, Harry Houdini, escape artist, magician. He was born on this day in 1874. Robert Koch announced in Berlin that he has isolated growth in the tuberculous bacteria, which is believed the cause of all forms of tuberculosis in 1882. So there we're working towards a cure for tuberculosis. In 1887, American comedian director Fanny Arbuckle was born. Pioneering French science fiction author Jules Verne died in Amiens, France on this day. The movie The Great Escape, have you seen the movie Great Escape? Well,
yes.
That actual escape took place today, 1944. More than 75 Allied prisoners undertook a daring escape from a POW camp in Sagan, Germany, though most of them eventually recaptured and inspired the classic World War II movie, The Great Escape. And this is starring Steve McQueen, but yeah, he was in it, but he wasn't the only big star in it. I think James Garner, to me, was a big star. Next. The first Billboard magazine pop album chart came out with American singer Nat King Cole's Trio became the first record album to appear at number 1 on this date in 1945. This day 1976, Peyton Manning was born. So Peyton Manning was born while people were being thrown out of airplanes in Argentina. Just juxtapose those two images in your head. In 1980, in El Salvador, Archbishop Oscar Romero was assassinated while celebrating Mass in San Salvador. He was canonized in 2018. There's a lot going on this day in history. Other birthdays today. Steve Ballmer had I think he's had Apple, right? Not Apple. Who's Steve Ballmer in? Steve McQueen. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I was gonna say.
I'll look it up in a minute. Steve McQueen, star of The Great Escape, was born on this day in 1930 by coincidence. So he was born 1930, right? The day he was 15 years old, 15th birthday, was the day that The Great Escape took place. He starred in that movie. So when he was 15 years old, he's sitting there going, man, someday I'm going to star in a movie about that, Dad. And Dad's like, shut up. Shut up. Pass me the Cheerios. I don't know if they had Cheerios. Harry Houdini was born. I already said that. So that's basically everything that happened this day, March 25th. All of it. Nothing else happened anyway.
Who's gonna win the Elite Eight in both women's?
Oh yeah, we got to do the men's and women's tournaments for the week.
They're gonna have
the unsolved games.
There's already been 2 games for the men's tournament.
Right.
Go into the final 8.
Yeah.
But we don't know the results of Alabama, San Diego, Creighton, Princeton, Houston, Miami, and Xavier in Texas yet, which will happen over the weekend. And then also, I think those games will also happen over the weekend. I think.
Mm-hmm. They all happen. Let's see. There's going to be.
We're going to be at the Final Four next week.
Right. There'll be 4 women's games tonight, 4 men's games tonight, and tomorrow night there will be 2. Tomorrow night because it's Saturday. There'll be 2 men's games and probably 4 women's games. And Sunday there'll be 2 men's games and 2 women's games. But Monday the women's bracket will finally be settled. So
yeah,
I think we just pick it all.
The women's bracket is on the 31st.
Okay, yeah, so it comes up pretty way on bracket. I think the women's happens before the men's. I think the men's they even push it up further, but I'm not sure. I'm not even looking at it. Why am I talking? All right, so let's have our predictions.
Okay, we'll start with the men's bracket first here.
All right.
I'm going to look at. Remember who I picked here? Okay, on my paper. Right. So for me, I said that Alabama would win and then Princeton would win. So who do I think is going to win the Alabama versus Princeton? I'm going to go with Alabama. I think it would be crazy if Princeton won against Alabama. Don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to go with Alabama is going to win that game anyway.
Is Alabama playing Princeton? Oh, you've got them advancing.
I've got Alabama and Princeton winning their games. They're going to go to the next round. And then I have Alabama winning against Princeton.
Oh, okay. So those games haven't happened.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think I have San Diego
over the weekend, so there's no way for me to know who's winning.
I've got Creighton coming out of that mess in the Final Four. Let's just put it that way. Okay, and let's move on to the next pick.
You have Creighton winning that. Okay.
Yeah. Let's just move on to the next one.
Then we had the results of FAU and Tennessee versus Kansas and Michigan State, with FAU and Kansas State going into the Elite 8. I guess I'm going to go with Kansas again for here. Kansas.
I'm riding Cinderella on this one because, I got a chance to redeem myself. I should have been betting. I should have been betting. Right, I should have been betting on this game, right? Florida Atlantic won 31 games during the season. That's hard to do. I don't care what your conference is. So yeah, they're a good team. Maybe a Final Four team. I'm gonna ride with the Owls. Go ahead, next one.
All right. Then for the Houston and Miami and Xavier and Texas games, which haven't happened yet, I put Houston winning and Xavier winning, and I'm going to, honestly, I'm kind of ride and die for Houston right now. I don't know why, but I'm like, these guys are gonna win the whole thing. That's my brain is saying. I don't know why.
So yeah, we have Houston against Miami. I think I'm gonna take a hot shooting Miami team, and I'm gonna take Texas. I think I'm already picked that game. Actually, I'm already picked that game,
You've
so I
already
can't
picked
go.
this grouping.
Yeah, I
But
did. I don't have it in front of me.
Go to the next round, I guess. After that.
If I already picked this grouping, did I have Houston winning?
I think you went with Florida. Actually, I don't remember.
No, I'm going with Texas.
Have
I am going
papers
with
in front of you.
Texas. I'm going with Texas. Texas all the way to the Final Four. I'm just going to pick my final.
Okay, yeah, we're just picking who's going to the Final Four.
Okay, and we're going to pick UConn Gonzaga because that game is already set.
Yeah.
I'm going to take the Gonzaga Bulldogs against the Huskies. It's going to be a dog fight. Oh my goodness. Sportscasters everywhere.
It's going to be a dog fight. I'm going to choose UConn for that. I just can't. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And that's
I know what dog's going to win. In our Final Four, my Final Four then is going to be Gonzaga Bulldogs against the Texas Longhorns, because it's going to be a dog against cattle. Then we got the Owls of Florida Atlantic tangling with Creighton. Creighton are Blue Jays. What would you take between an owl and a Blue Jay? I have no idea.
I would take Owls. But I'm going totally different, right? I'm going I don't even know what Alabama is.
Crimson Tide. It's like a lot of blood, I think. It's a lot of blood.
I'm going with the Crimson Tide versus what is Kansas?
Kansas State. It's Kansas State Wildcats. Wildcats, the #1 sports nickname in sports. In fact, one year, the Final Four, I'm not making this up, the Final Four was the Kansas State No, it wasn't Kansas State. Kansas State would have made it. But the Final Four was all 3 Wildcats. It was Kentucky Wildcats, it was Villanova Wildcats, and it was the Arizona Wildcats. 3 teams in the Final Four called the Wildcats. And if Kansas State would have made it, it would have been perfect. All right, go ahead.
All right, let's go on to our female picks. Our women's team picks. Don't know why I'm using scientific terms.
Well, you're a scientist.
I am a scientist. Okay, so I originally chose for South Carolina and Maryland to go to the final, and I'm gonna go with Maryland winning, or not the 4. And I'm gonna go with Maryland winning against South Carolina as home team.
I like Maryland. I want to be a homer. South Carolina's been #1 all season. They won their last game by 31 points.
But that was against the 8th seed.
Wait a minute, here.
Oh, sorry.
I've got South Carolina playing UCLA here. What? Yeah, you have something else?
They haven't won yet. You have no idea.
What? Who has it?
South Carolina and UCLA's game is.
Oh, okay. I gotcha. All right. I'm just looking at my brackets. All right. And I've got Maryland.
They're gonna win.
I've got Maryland beating Notre Dame. I will have Maryland beating Notre Dame, but I will have South Carolina prevailing to the Final Four. All right, next one.
Then we've got.
By the way, South Carolina, the Gamecocks. Now, how do you rename the female version of the Gamecocks? I'll have you work on that in your head. You don't have to say it. Go ahead.
All right. Next, we've got the Ole Miss and the Louisville game, which I said Ole Miss is gonna win, and then it's gonna be the Colorado and Iowa game, and I said I was gonna win. I think I was gonna win overall in the final, going to the Final Four.
Okay, so we're doing Iowa, Colorado. I got Iowa, and we've got what was the other? What was the other bracket? Colorado,
Ole
Duke.
Miss and Louisville. I think you picked Louisville. I remember you picking Louisville.
Oh, I picked these already. Okay.
Yeah, these are the ones we picked on Monday, right? After the games.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put Stanford all the way through.
Stanford.
Yeah, did I pick Ole Miss?
No, you picked Louisville.
Oh, I did? No, Ole Miss is the other game.
Ole
Stanford, Ole Miss.
Already finalized.
Yeah, but did I miss them? Did I pick Stanford or Ole Miss? I don't remember. I don't have my brackets in front of me. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, you can go get them if you want, because I don't remember.
I don't know where they are. I can go get them if you got time for me to report this place looking for a piece of paper. But no, I'm not gonna look for them. I'm gonna go ahead. If I got it wrong, I got it wrong, right? But I'm pretty sure Ole Miss and Louisville. Okay. I guess I gotta take Louis. No, I gotta take Ole Miss. I gotta take Ole Miss. Got it. Go on. I can't take teams I didn't take, right?
You picked Louisville last time.
Yeah, but I think I picked Stanford to win and Ole Miss won in the upset.
No, I'm saying you picked Louisville to win against Ole Miss.
I did.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
There are 5 versus the 18. So.
All right. Derpa.
Wait,
okay. Next pick. I've got Iowa defeating Colorado.
In the eighth seed. 8. What is it called? The Mighty 8 or whatever it's called.
Right. Colorado and Iowa are playing tonight. I've got Iowa. Yeah. And
so who's going to win against Louisville and Iowa? That's what you're doing.
Iowa. I've got Iowa.
Okay.
Sorry about that. My bracket is
because we're not covering the games when they happen.
I watched some of these games, but it is not easy. My schedule. Sit down and watch a whole game, or even watch the highlights, right? Even the highlights are 8 minutes each.
Yeah.
Okay, next ones.
All right. So we've got Miami, Florida versus Villanova. Haven't happened yet. Those happen tomorrow. And LSU and Utah, which also happens today, actually. Yep. LSU and Utah happens today. Both of those games happen today. My bad. They haven't happened yet. So we're choosing. I already chose that Villanova was going to go ahead and LSU was going to go ahead. And then I think LSU is going to win on the 26th against Villanova. I do not.
I've got the Utes. I got the Utes going to the Final Four. The Utes are going to advance over LSU and over their next round opponent, which I may have called that game wrong. Which is did you notice Miami's got both teams still in the tournament?
Yeah.
Way to go, Hurricanes! All right, next game.
And then our final bracket here is the Virginia Tech versus Tennessee, and then the Ohio State versus UConn. I chose VTech winning and UConn winning, and then I'm going to go with VTech going to the Final Four.
Got Tennessee grabbing that slot. So that gives me a Final Four of the Tennessee Volunteers, the Iowa Hawkeyes. What was my other one? It was South Carolina Gamecocks and Utah Utes. So we got an Indian tribe, a made-up thing, which I don't know what it is.
Wait, what are you talking about? Where are you getting Utah from?
What?
Where are you getting
Utah Utes.
From?
Final Four, Utah.
No,
they're playing LSU.
It's going to be either Ohio State or is that UConn? Is Utah?
Utah, not UConn. Utah.
There's no Utah team in this bracket.
Oh, sure there is. They're playing LSU at 5 p.m. today. Utah Utes.
They're not in this particular bracket. We're choosing.
What are we talking about? The Final Four teams I am predicting.
Okay.
Utah, right? Utah. Okay. South Carolina. Okay. Now I've lost my bracket. I don't know what you're talking about. Why do you think Utah's not in it?
The final one. Just the final one.
Oh, we're not picking the final game. We're not picking the final.
No, you don't understand.
What?
I'm asking
I really
who's
don't.
going to win against either Virginia Tech and Tennessee. I don't remember who you picked there.
Tennessee.
Okay, and Ohio State and UConn. I don't remember who you picked there either.
UConn is UConn still in the tournament?
It's Ohio State and UConn tomorrow night.
I don't see that one.
It's on the bottom.
Gotcha.
Seattle 3.
There you go. I'm missing a whole bracket. Okay.
Yeah,
exactly.
I was like,
UConn. I got UConn. I got UConn. Go ahead.
You got UConn. Okay. And I have VTech. So you think UConn's going to win. I think Virginia Tech's going to win. All right. So My final four for the women's bracket is Maryland, Iowa, LSU, and BTEC. Yours is Maryland,
Okay.
Iowa, Utah, and UConn.
Do I have Tennessee beating Virginia Tech?
I don't remember. I don't.
Okay, no, I've got Tennessee beating UConn. Tennessee is going to beat UConn. So I've
you're
got Tennessee.
Tennessee. Okay.
Yeah, because I was reading this wrong. You can't see what I see. It's just, it was too big on my screen.
Fine.
UConn is going to play Iowa, and in the other bracket, I'm going to have Utah playing South Carolina.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. That's our picks. That's our complete
This has been
total
Allison being confused what's going on from the Netherlands. I hope we'll see after the weekend on Monday who got it right and got it wrong. And we'll see you next time next week.
We'll see you next week for the Trump indictments on Pour Coffee. Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.